You're nothing but a clumsy black maid. Edward Langston's voice sliced through the Manhattan gala, his eyes narrowing at Amara Johnson as a single drop of wine hit the pristine tablecloth. The room, a glittering cage of crystal chandeliers and marble floors, froze. Amara, a 28-year-old black waitress, gripped her tray, her knuckles whitening. Her heart pounded, but her face stayed stone cold. A mask forged from years of enduring sneers. The guests, billionaires, investors, lawyers, leaned in, their smirks sharp as knives. Langston, a 50-year-old venture capital titan with slick-back hair and a Rolex glinting like a warning, stood up, his chair scraping the floor. You think you belong here serving us? Clean that up or you're out of a job. Amara's jaw tightened, her teeth grinding as she knelt to dab the stain. Her worn sneakers squeaked against the marble, drawing snickers from a woman in a ruby gown, her lips curled in disdain. Look at her, the woman hissed to her companion, loud enough for all to hear. She can't even hold a tray right. Laughter erupted, a cruel chorus that stung like a slap. Amara's pulse raced, but she kept her movements precise, wiping the cloth with deliberate calm. She was a single mom from the Bronx, scraping by for her 5-year-old son, Malik. Every insult landed like a brick, but she wouldn't let them see her crack. Langston leaned closer, his breath hot with whiskey. You're lucky I don't have you thrown out right now, he spat. Know your place. Amara's fingers trembled on the tray, but her eyes locked onto his, unflinching. She wanted to scream, to tell them she'd studied finance, that she knew more than they assumed, but she bit her tongue, tasting the bitter tang of restraint. The room's eyes bore into her, waiting for her to break. Charles Wentworth, the billionaire host, sat at the head of the table, his gray eyes unreadable, his silence a weight. He hadn't spoken, hadn't moved, but his presence loomed, a judge in a court of vultures. A man in a tailored tux, his cufflinks flashing, chimed in. Maybe she's here to steal tips, he sneered, sparking another round of chuckles. Amara stood, her tray steady, her back straight as steel. She adjusted a napkin, her fingers brushing the edge of a $1 billion contract on the table. Her eyes flicked to it, numbers, clauses, a trap she recognized from her father's old books. Her heart skipped. She knew what it meant. Langston caught her glance and stepped closer, his voice a low growl. Eyes off the table, girl. Stick to pouring wine. The room pulsed with tension, every whisper a blade aimed at her. A woman with diamond earrings scoffed. She probably thinks she's one of us. Amara's chest tightened, her breath shallow, but she refused to bow. She'd faced worse. Landlords, bill collectors, nights crying over Malik's hospital bills. This was just another fight. Her fingers grazed the contract again, her mind racing. She saw it, a clause buried in fine print. A reverse takeover that could gut Wentworth's empire in weeks. Her father's voice echoed in her head. Never trust a deal that hides its teeth. She wanted to speak, to warn, but Langston's glare pinned her like a predator. The room waited, hungry for her next move, as her hand hovered over the tray, a single glass wobbling, threatening to fall. Get your hands off that, Langston barked, his finger jabbing toward Amara's tray as the glass teetered. His face flushed crimson, veins bulging in his neck like ropes ready to snap. Amara steadied the glass with a flick of her wrist, her nails digging into the wood beneath. Her breath caught, but she forced it even, refusing to let the tremor show. The room's laughter swelled, a venomous wave crashing over her, but she stood tall, her spine rigid as iron. She wouldn't crumble. Not here, not for them. Her mind flashed to Malik, his small face lighting up when she came home from shifts like this, his hugs erasing the day's bruises. Langston stepped in closer, his shadow swallowing her. You heard me. Move! He snatched the contract away, his knuckles brushing hers, sending a jolt through her arm. Amara's lips pressed into a thin line, her teeth clamping down to swallow the fire rising in her throat. She wanted to lash out, to expose the claws she'd spotted, the hidden poison that would bleed Wentworth's fortune dry. But she knew better. Words from a waitress like her? They'd twist them into nonsense. Instead, she met Langston's glare head-on, her dark eyes burning with quiet defiance. The truth will speak for itself, she said, her voice low and steady, cutting through the mockery like a blade through fog. The laughter faltered, a few guests shifting in their seats, their smirks cracking. The woman in the ruby gown leaned back, her fingers tightening on her champagne flute. "What did she just say?" she muttered, her tone laced with unease. Amara turned away, her steps measured, each one a deliberate act of resistance. She picked up an empty plate from the table, her fingers curling around the china, feeling the cool surface ground her. The room watched, expectant, hungry for her to falter. But she didn't. She moved to the next guest, refilling a glass with precision, the wine pouring in a smooth arc, her hands betraying no shake. A man with a gold chain snorted, "Truth? From her? Keep dreaming." His words hit her back like darts, but Amara's shoulders didn't slump. She straightened a fork on the table, her movements deliberate, a silent declaration that she wouldn't be erased. Wentworth's eyes followed her, his fingers drumming on the armrest, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. He'd seen the contract too, that fleeting glance at the page she'd touched. But he said nothing, his silence a heavier blow than the insults. Amara's chest ached, her heart hammering against her ribs. But she pushed it down, focusing on the task. Serve, survive, get home to Malik. As she circled the table, another voice piped up, a lawyer with sharp glasses and sharper words. "Back to the kitchen where you belong." He waved her off like swatting a fly. Amara paused, her tray balanced perfectly, and looked at him, her gaze unyielding. She didn't reply, but her silence roared louder than any shout, filling the space with unspoken power. The lawyer's smirk wavered, his eyes darting away. The dominoes started falling. Whispers spread, guests exchanging glances, the air thickening with unspoken tension. Amara continued her path, weaving through the crowd, her ponytail swinging like a pendulum marking time until the storm broke. She reached the edge of the room, her breath coming quicker now, the weight of their stares pressing like a vice. But she held her head high, her chin lifted, a queen in disguise among fools. Malik's drawing from that morning flashed in her mind. A stick figure, mom with a cape, supermom scrawled in crayon. It fueled her, stealing her resolve. She wouldn't beg for respect, she'd command it. As she slipped toward the service door, her hand brushed her apron pocket, feeling the crinkle of her father's old note, a reminder of the knowledge they all underestimated. The room's energy shifted, a subtle crack in their armor, as her words echoed in their minds, a prophecy waiting to unfold. "Stop laughing," Charles Wentworth's voice boomed, his fist slamming the table, rattling glasses and silencing the room in a heartbeat. His gray eyes flashed with fury, fixed on Langston, who froze mid-sneer, his mouth gaping like a fish yanked from water. Wentworth's chair scraped back as he stood, his broad shoulders tensing under his tailored suit, the air around him crackling with authority. Amara's words, "The truth will speak for itself," hung in the silence, a grenade pin pulled. Wentworth snatched the contract from Langston's grip, his fingers crumpling the edges, his breath heavy with sudden doubt. He'd seen her touch it, seen the flicker in her eyes. Now his own scanned the pages, hunting for the trap she'd implied. Langston recovered, his face twisting into a mask of outrage. "What the hell? She's just a waitress." He lunged forward, his hand reaching for the papers, but Wentworth shoved him back, his palm flat against Langston's chest, the impact echoing like a slap. "Back off," Wentworth growled, his voice low and lethal, his jaw set hard. The guests shifted, their chairs creaking, whispers dying as tension coiled tighter. Amara paused at the service door, her hand on the knob, her pulse thundering in her ears. She didn't turn, but she felt the shift, the room's mockery crumbling under Wentworth's glare. Her fingers clenched the doorframe, nails biting into wood, holding back the urge to rush back and expose everything. Wentworth's eyes narrowed on page 47, line 12, the claws she'd grazed. His breath hitched, his free hand rubbing his temple as realization dawned. It was there, a reverse takeover, slick and hidden, designed to strip his assets in 30 days. His stomach knotted, sweat beading on his forehead despite the chilled air. "Hold everything," he ordered, his voice slicing through the murmurs. "No one signs a damn thing." The lawyer at his side blinked, his glasses slipping down his nose, his pen hovering uselessly. "But sir," Wentworth cut him off with a raised hand, his fingers trembling just enough to betray the storm inside. He'd almost walked into ruin, blinded by greed and assumptions. Langston exploded, his fists balling at his sides. "You're listening to her? That nobody?" He pointed at Amara's retreating form, his arms shaking with rage. The woman in the ruby gown nodded furiously, her necklace clinking as she leaned in. "She's bluffing." But Wentworth ignored them, his mind racing back to Amara's steady gaze, her unflinching posture. He'd dismissed her like the rest, but now doubt gnawed at him, sharp as teeth. His heart pounded, regret flooding in waves. He should have stopped the insult sooner, should have seen her as more than a shadow in uniform. As Amara pushed through the door, a folded paper slipped from her apron pocket, fluttering to the floor like a fallen leaf. She didn't notice, her steps quickening down the hallway, her breath ragged, the echo of laughter still ringing in her skull. Wentworth spotted it, his eyes darting down. He bent swiftly, scooping it up before anyone else could, his fingers unfolding the yellowed note. Scrawled in neat handwriting, a formula, a warning about hidden clauses, signed by her father. A name that tugged at his memory, a ghost from old financial scandals. His grip tightened on the paper, his knuckles whitening, a puzzle piece snapping into place. This wasn't random. She knew something deeper. The room erupted in chaos, guests demanding explanations, Langston pacing like a caged wolf, his face redder than before. "Restart the signing," he shouted, but Wentworth folded the note into his pocket, his expression hardening into resolve. "Meeting adjourned," he declared, his voice final, brooking no argument. The lawyer gathered papers frantically, his hands fumbling, while the woman with diamonds clutched her purse, her eyes wide with confusion. Wentworth's mind whirled. Amara's silence wasn't weakness, it was armor. He'd find her, make this right. But first, he needed answers. As the crowd dispersed in murmurs, he stared at the door she'd vanished through, the note burning in his pocket like a fuse lit for the explosion to come. "Find her! Now!" Charles Wentworth snarled at his assistant, his phone slamming onto the desk in his penthouse office, the impact cracking the screen. His chest heaved, fists clenched as he paced the room, his polished shoes thudding against the hardwood. The note from Amara's pocket burned in his hand, its faded ink a accusation staring back at him. He'd let her walk out, humiliated while he sat silent. Regret clawed at his throat, his jaw grinding until his teeth ached. He crumpled the paper slightly, then smoothed it, his fingers tracing the formula. Her father's warning, an echo from scandals he'd buried long ago. He couldn't shake her eyes, that unyielding stare piercing through the gala's facade. His assistant, a young man with wire-rimmed glasses, nodded frantically, his hands flying over his laptop keys. "Sir, her name's Amara Johnson. Works shifts at the hotel and a diner in the Bronx." Wentworth's eyes narrowed, his breath short and sharp. "Get me her address. I'm going." The assistant hesitated, his fingers pausing. "But sir, it's late." Wentworth cut him off, his voice a whip. "Do it!" The man typed faster, sweat beading on his brow, the screen's glow reflecting his fear. Wentworth grabbed his coat, his movements jerky, driven by a fury turned inward. He'd built an empire on deals like this, blind to the traps, deaf to warnings from those he deemed beneath him. Amara's words replayed, "The truth will speak for itself." They sliced deeper now, exposing his arrogance. In the limo racing through Manhattan's neon-streaked streets, Wentworth stared out the window, his reflection haunted in the glass. His fingers drummed the seat, each tap a hammer on his conscience. He pulled out the note again, squinting at the signature. Her father, an accountant he vaguely recalled from old boardroom battles, a man ruined by schemes like Langston's. His stomach twisted, bile rising. He'd profited from those ruins, never looking back. Now this woman, this waitress, had cracked his world open with a glance. The driver swerved through traffic, horns blaring, but Wentworth barely noticed, his mind locked on her face, her steady hands amid the storm. Arriving at the diner, a greasy spoon tucked in a rundown Bronx block, Wentworth burst through the door, the bell jangling harshly, heads turned, forks pausing mid-bite. Amara stood behind the counter, wiping it down, her apron stained from the night's rush. Her eyes widened for a split second, then hardened, her grip tightening on the rag until her knuckles paled. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her voice steady but edged with steel. Wentworth strode forward, ignoring the stares from patrons, truckers, night shift workers, their faces etched with exhaustion. "I need to talk. About the contract." Amara's lips thinned, her shoulders squaring. "Not here." But he pressed on, his hand slapping the note onto the counter. "This. Explain it." She glanced at it, her breath catching, her fingers reaching out then pulling back. "That's private." Wentworth leaned in, his voice dropping to an urgent growl. "You saved me billions. Why?" The diner's hum faded, eyes on them. A cook in the back shouted, "Everything okay, Amara?" She nodded sharply, her chin lifting, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of vulnerability, memories of her father's downfall crashing in. Wentworth saw it, his own regret mirroring hers. "I was wrong," he admitted, the words tasting like ash, his fists unclenching for the first time that night. "Let me make it right." Amara crossed her arms, her nails digging into her sleeves, holding back the torrent inside. She'd clocked out from the gala bruised but unbroken, racing home to Malik, tucking him in with stories of strong women who fought back. Now this man, this billionaire, invaded her turf, demanding answers. Her heart raced, anger mixing with wary hope. "You think an apology fixes it?" she shot back, her voice low but fierce. Wentworth shook his head, his eyes pleading now, the power stripped away. "No, but listening might." The patrons murmured, one old man at the counter nodding subtly, his weathered hands folding a napkin. Wentworth waited, his breath held as Amara weighed his words, her fingers relaxing just a fraction. He followed her to a booth, sliding in opposite, the vinyl creaking under his weight. "Tell me about your father," he said, his tone softer, probing. Amara's eyes flashed, her teeth biting her lip to stem the flood. "He was ruined by men like you, like Langston." Wentworth winced, his hand rubbing his neck, the knot there tightening. He'd heard whispers of old frauds, but never connected the dots. Now they stabbed him. "I didn't know." She leaned forward, her voice a dagger. "You never looked." The accusation hung, heavy, as the diner's clock ticked, marking the seconds of his unraveling. As they talked, fragments emerged. Her dropped finance studies, nights poring over her father's books, spotting scams in headlines. Wentworth listened, his interruptions dying on his tongue, his face paling with each revelation. His phone buzzed, Langston calling, but he silenced it, his thumb jabbing the screen viciously. "He's behind this," he muttered, his eyes meeting hers. Amara nodded, her resolve hardening, her hands unfolding on the table. "Yes, and more." Wentworth's pulse quickened, a alliance forming in the dim light. He'd come seeking redemption. Now he glimpsed a deeper war. As dawn crept in, he stood, his coat over his arm. "Come with me. We'll expose him." Amara hesitated, her fingers tracing the counter's edge, but her eyes held fire, ready to ignite the next battle. "Rent's late again, you worthless leech." The landlord's fist pounded the door of Amara's cramped Bronx apartment, his voice a thunderclap echoing down the hallway. Amara yanked it open, her eyes blazing, her frame blocking the threshold like a fortress wall, her muscles tensed, her fists curling at her sides, ready to shove back if he stepped closer. Malik peeked from behind her leg, his small hands clutching her jeans, his wide eyes reflecting her fire. "Back off," Amara snapped, her voice a whip crack, her chin jutting forward. The landlord sneered, his beer gut heaving, his finger jabbing at her chest. "Pay up, or you're out on the street with your brat." Amara's teeth ground together, her nails biting into her palms, drawing pinpricks of blood. She wouldn't beg, not from him, not from anyone. She slammed a wad of bills into his hand, her arm thrusting like a piston, the money scraped from double shifts and skipped meals. "That's it. Now get out." The landlord counted it slowly, his lips curling in disgust, but he backed away, his boots scuffing the floor. Amara shut the door with a bang that rattled the frame, her shoulders slumping for a split second before she straightened, turning to Malik with a forced smile. "It's okay, baby," she whispered, kneeling to his level, her hands cupping his face, her thumbs brushing away his fear. His tiny arms wrapped around her neck, his hug fierce, fueling her resolve. She wouldn't let this world break them. Not after the gala's venom. Not after Wentworth's intrusion at the diner. In the dim kitchen light, Amara moved like a shadow warrior, her steps quick and sure. She pulled out her father's old ledger from a drawer, its pages worn and yellowed, her fingers flipping through equations and notes that had saved her more times than she could count. Malik climbed onto a stool, his legs swinging, watching her with awe. "Mommy, what's that?" he asked, his voice piping high. Amara's lips quirked, her eyes softening as she pointed to a formula. "This is how we fight back, kiddo. Numbers don't lie." She traced the lines, her voice steady, teaching him the basics. Debts, interests, traps hidden in fine print. Malik nodded, his small brow furrowing in concentration, mimicking her focus. Her heart swelled, a rare warmth cutting through the chill of exhaustion. The phone buzzed on the counter. Another bill collector, their robotic voice demanding payment. Amara snatched it up, her grip iron. "I'll pay when I can," she barked, hanging up before they could retort. Her breath came sharp, her chest tightening, but she shoved it down, turning to the fridge. Empty shelves stared back, mocking her. She grabbed the last apple, slicing it with a knife that flashed under the bulb, her cuts precise. "Here, eat this," she said, handing half to Malik, her own stomach growling in protest. He munched happily, oblivious, his laughter a balm on her frayed nerves. She ate her share slowly, her mind racing. Wentworth's offer lingered like smoke, tempting but dangerous. Trust a billionaire? After years of being stepped on? A knock echoed. Softer this time. Amara peered through the peephole, her body tensing again. Mrs. Rodriguez, the elderly neighbor, stood there, her cane tapping impatiently. Amara opened the door, her stance protective. "What's wrong?" Mrs. Rodriguez thrust a stack of mail forward, her wrinkled hands shaking. "These bills, they're robbing me blind." Amara took them, her eyes scanning the pages, spotting the inflated charges instantly. "Sit down," she commanded, pulling out a chair, her movements efficient. Malik watched as Amara spread the papers on the table, her pencil flying, crossing out errors, calculating rebates. "They added fees that don't apply," she explained, her voice firm, her pen stabbing the paper. Mrs. Rodriguez's eyes widened, her gnarled fingers clasping Amara's arm. "You're an angel." Amara shook her head, her jaw set. "Just fair play." As she worked, memories surged. Her father at this same table, years ago, fighting similar battles before the big firms crushed him. His death had left her raw, pregnant, alone, but his lessons armored her. She finished the recalculations, her handwriting bold, handing the corrected forms back. "Take this to them. Demand a refund." Mrs. Rodriguez hugged her frail body trembling with gratitude. Amara patted her back, her own eyes stinging, but she blinked it away, her resolve hardening like steel. She wasn't broken. She was unbreakable, a force in the shadows helping where the powerful wouldn't. Malik tugged her sleeve. "Mommy helps everyone." Amara ruffled his hair, her touch gentle, her heart aching with love. She glanced at the clock. Another shift loomed, but first she tucked him into bed, her voice weaving a story of a brave woman who toppled giants with truth. As he drifted off, his breaths even, Amara sat on the edge, her hands clasped, whispering to herself. "We keep fighting." Wentworth's face flashed in her mind, his apology raw but real. Maybe alliance wasn't surrender. She stood, grabbing her jacket, her steps purposeful toward the door, the night outside calling her to the next skirmish, a spark igniting for the revelations ahead. "You think you can just barge in and fix everything with words?" Amara's voice cracked like a whip, her eyes locking onto Wentworth's as she shoved the apartment door wider, her stance a barrier of fury. Her fingers gripped the knob until her knuckles ached, her body vibrating with pent-up rage from the landlord's assault and years of swallowed pride. Wentworth stood in the hallway, his coat dripping from the sudden rain outside, his face etched with strain, his shoulders hunched under the weight of his own mistakes. I came to apologize, he said, his voice rough, stepping forward only to halt as she raised a hand, her palm flat like a stop sign. Not enough, she shot back, her teeth bared in a snarl, her breath hot and quick. He pushed past the threshold anyway, his eyes scanning the sparse room. Malik's toys scattered, the ledger open on the table, his intrusion slicing the air. Amara slammed the door behind him, the bang echoing like a gunshot, her back pressing against it as if to hold the world out. You let them tear me apart at that gala, she hissed, her fists balling, nails digging crescents into her skin. Wentworth's jaw clenched, his hands raising in surrender, but she cut him off. Don't. You sat there, silent. His eyes dropped, shame flooding his features, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed hard. I was blind, he admitted, his voice cracking, his fingers twitching at his sides. Blinded by my ego. Amara's laugh barked out, bitter and sharp, her head shaking as she paced, her sneakers squeaking on the linoleum. She stopped inches from him, her finger jabbing his chest, feeling the rapid thump of his heart through his shirt. Ego? Try privilege. You think a sorry erases the slurs, the laughs. Wentworth winced, his body recoiling, but he held his ground, his eyes pleading. No, but I can make it right. Help me expose Langston. Amara's breath hitched, her arms crossing tight over her chest, hugging herself against the vulnerability creeping in. She remembered the diner talk, his listening without interruption, but trust didn't come easily. Why should I? What's in it for me? He leaned in, his voice dropping to an urgent rasp. Justice. For your father. For you. Her eyes narrowed, her lips pressing thin, the mention of her dad a knife twist in her gut. She turned away, her hands rummaging through a drawer, pulling out a box of old letters, her fingers trembling as she slammed it on the table. Fine, but on my terms. Wentworth nodded, his breath easing slightly, his posture straightening as he approached. Name them. Amara flipped open the box, her movements jerky, papers spilling out, her father's correspondence, faded ink detailing Langston's past frauds. First, you admit publicly what happened at the gala. Own your silence. He hesitated, his face paling, his hand rubbing his neck where tension knotted like rope. That could tank my reputation? She spun on him, her eyes flashing. Good. Feel what I felt. He nodded slowly, his shoulders sagging in defeat, his voice low. Agreed. She thrust a letter into his hands, her grip lingering, forcing him to feel the weight of history. Second, you protect my son. No fallout touches him. Wentworth's eyes softened, glancing at Malik's drawing pinned to the fridge, a crayon hero mom, his regrets mirroring in his gaze. Done. Anything else? Amara's voice hardened, her chin lifting. You listen. No interruptions. I lead this. He pocketed the letter, his fingers brushing hers, a spark of alliance igniting. You have my word. But she pulled back, her walls still high, her heart guarded like a vault. As they sat at the table, Amara spread the letters, her pencil pointing to key phrases, her explanations clipped and fierce. See here, Langston's signature on a rigged deal that bankrupted my dad. Wentworth leaned forward, his brows furrowing, his finger tracing the lines, shock widening his eyes. This links to my contract. She nodded, her voice gaining strength, her hands steady now. Exactly. He's repeating history. A new letter caught her eye, tucked deeper in the box, her fingers unfolding it with care, her breath catching as fresh words emerged. A mention of Eleanor, Wentworth's wife, in a cryptic note about shared schemes. Wait, she muttered, her eyes scanning rapidly, her pulse quickening. Wentworth grabbed it, his face draining of color, his fists crumpling the edges. Eleanor, involved. Amara's mind raced, connections snapping into place, her body leaning in, adrenaline surging. This changes everything. Wentworth's voice shook, betrayal etching deep lines on his face. She's been playing me. Amara's hand shot out, gripping his arm, her nails pressing in. We expose them both, but you follow my lead. He met her gaze, his nod firm, resolve hardening his features. Together. The air thickened with unspoken vows, her skepticism cracking under his raw honesty. She stood, pacing again, her steps fueled by newfound fire, the letter a weapon in her arsenal. As the clock ticked toward midnight, Wentworth rose, his coat in hand, but paused at the door. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick. Amara's response was curt. "Prove it." He left, the door clicking shut, leaving her alone with the papers, her fingers tracing Eleanor's name, a puzzle piece unlocking darker secrets. She tucked the box away, her resolve steeling, but a shadow of doubt lingered. Trusting him meant risking everything. Malik stirred in his sleep, his soft breaths a reminder of stakes higher than revenge. Amara kissed his forehead, her lips lingering, then grabbed her phone, dialing Lisa, her voice urgent. "We've got more. Get ready." The night held its breath, poised for the unraveling storm ahead. "Stay out of this, you meddling bitch!" Victor Crane's roar exploded in the hotel lobby, his face contorted in rage as he charged at Amara, his hand clamping down on her wrist like a vice. His fingers dug in, bruising her skin, his breath reeking of stale coffee and malice. Amara twisted free, her arm snapping back, her eyes blazing with defiance, her free hand balling into a fist, ready to strike. "Let go!" she snarled, her voice a blade, her body coiling like a spring. Victor, the wiry hotel manager, with a perpetual scowl and sweat-stained collar, loomed closer, his other hand pointing accusingly. "You think you can snoop around my office? You're fired, right now." Amara's teeth clenched, pain shooting up her arm, but she stood her ground, her shoulders squaring against the assault. She'd slipped into the back offices after her shift, following a hunch from the letter. Eleanor's name tied to hotel records, payments funneled through Victor. Now, caught mid-search, her heart hammered, adrenaline flooding her veins. "You're hiding something," she accused, her voice steady, her eyes locking onto his shifty gaze. Victor laughed, a harsh bark, shoving her toward the exit, his grip returning to her shoulder, pinching hard. "Hiding? From a nobody like you? Get out before I call the cops." Wentworth burst through the lobby doors, his coat flapping, his face thunderous as he saw the scene. "Hands off her!" he bellowed, striding forward, his fist grabbing Victor's collar, yanking him back with a jerk that made the manager stumble. Victor's eyes widened, his hands flailing, but Wentworth held firm, his knuckles whitening on the fabric. "She's with me," Wentworth growled, his breath hot on Victor's face. Amara rubbed her wrist, red marks blooming, her pulse racing, but she stepped beside Wentworth, her stance unyielding. "He's in on it," she whispered urgently, her finger jabbing toward Victor. "With Eleanor and Langston." Victor wrenched free, his tie askew, his face flushing purple. "You don't know shit!" He lunged at Amara again, his arm swinging, but she dodged, her foot hooking his ankle, sending him sprawling to the floor with a thud that echoed through the empty lobby. Pain shot through her leg from the impact, but she ignored it, her breath coming in sharp bursts. Wentworth pinned Victor down, his knee on the man's back, his voice a lethal whisper. "Talk. Now." Victor squirmed, his cheek pressed to the cold tile, his eyes darting wildly. "Eleanor pays me to look the other way. Deals, transfers. She's bleeding you dry, Wentworth." Amara's stomach twisted, betrayal hitting like a punch, her hands trembling as she pulled out her phone, recording his confession, her thumb jabbing the screen. "Keep going," she demanded, her voice iron, leaning down close. Victor spat, his lips curling. "She and Langston. They've been plotting for years. Your empire. Hers now." Wentworth's face drained of color, his grip tightening, Victor gasping for air. "Proof?" Wentworth snapped, his knee digging deeper. Victor wheezed, his fingers clawing the floor. "In my safe. Emails, ledgers, all there." Lisa rushed in from the side door, her uniform disheveled, her eyes wide as she saw the struggle. "Amara!" she called, her hands clutching a folder she'd snatched from the office. Amara nodded sharply, her arm extending to take it, her fingers flipping through pages. Wire transfers, signatures matching Eleanor's elegant scrawl. "This ties it," Amara said, her voice triumphant but edged with fury, slamming the folder shut. Victor laughed weakly, his body going limp. "You're too late. She's already moved the money." Wentworth hauled him up, his fists bunching Victor's shirt, shaking him like a rag doll. Where? Victor's smirk returned, his teeth bared. Offshore. Untouchable. Amara's rage boiled over, her hand slapping the folder against Victor's chest. Not if we stop her. Wentworth released him, Victor collapsing in a heap, his breath ragged. Call security, Wentworth ordered Lisa, his voice commanding, his eyes meeting Amara's, a silent pact forming. Lisa nodded, her phone out, fingers dialing swiftly. As security dragged Victor away, his curses fading down the hall, Amara pocketed the folder, her wrists throbbing, but her resolve unbreakable. Wentworth touched her arm gently, his fingers light, concern etching his brow. You okay? She pulled away, her chin lifting. We're just starting. The lobby fell silent, the weight of revelations pressing down, but Amara's eyes gleamed with purpose. The folder, a key to deeper shadows waiting to be unearthed. Dig deeper, or we're all screwed. Amara's command sliced through the tension in Wentworth's dimly lit office. Her fingers stabbing at the folder's contents sprawled across the desk, her nails scraping the wood. Her body leaned forward, muscles taut like a predator ready to pounce. Her eyes drilling into Lisa's as the other woman nodded sharply, her hands already flipping through pages. Wentworth paced behind them, his fists opening and closing, his jaw locked in grim determination, sweat trickling down his temple despite the air-conditioned chill. The folder from Victor's safe, emails, transfers, coded notes, lay open like a gutted corpse, revealing Eleanor's fingerprints on every dirty deal. Amara's wrist still throbbed from Victor's grip, but she shoved the pain aside, her focus laser-sharp on the hunt. Lisa pulled out a laptop, her fingers flying over the keys, hacking into the hotel's encrypted logs with codes Amara had whispered earlier. Got it. Transfers to an offshore account, Lisa announced, her voice clipped, her screen glowing with rows of numbers. Amara snatched the laptop, her eyes scanning rapidly, her breath quickening as patterns emerged. Millions siphoned, disguised as investments, linking back to Langston's firm. See this? Amara jabbed the screen, her finger leaving a smudge. Eleanor signed off on everyone. Wentworth stopped pacing, his hand slamming the desk, rattling pens. My own wife, betraying me for years. His voice broke, fury twisting his features, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the edge. Amara didn't soften. She pushed harder. We need more. Follow the money. She grabbed her phone, dialing a contact from her father's old network, a retired auditor with a grudge against Langston. The line connected, static crackling. Talk, Amara demanded, her tone brooking no delay. The auditor's voice rasped through the speaker. Langston's been running shells for a decade. Eleanor's in deep, joint accounts in Cayman. Amara's lips curled in a fierce grin, her free hand scribbling notes, her pencil scratching furiously. Proof? The auditor hesitated, his breath heavy. Emails. I'll send them. She hung up, her thumb jabbing the end call, turning to Wentworth. Get your lawyers on this. Subpoena the banks. Wentworth nodded, his phone out in a flash, barking orders to his legal team. Lock it down. No leaks. But as he spoke, his face paled, his hand trembling slightly, betrayal gnawing deeper. Amara watched him, her own anger mirroring his, memories of her father's ruin fueling her drive. She wouldn't stop until they bled. Lisa interrupted, her eyes widening at the screen. Wait, here's a meeting log. Eleanor and Langston tonight at his penthouse. Amara's heart raced, her body surging with energy, her fists clenching. We crash it. Wentworth cut in, his voice sharp. Too risky. She spun on him, her eyes flashing. Risk? We're already in the fire. They piled into Wentworth's SUV, the engine roaring to life, tires screeching as they peeled out. Amara sat shotgun, her fingers tapping the dashboard, her mind mapping the confrontation. Lisa in the back hacked further, her laptop balanced on her knees, pulling up blueprints of Langston's building. Service entrance unguarded. Amara nodded, her chin jutting forward, her breaths steady despite the adrenaline spike. Wentworth gripped the wheel, his knuckles bone white, weaving through traffic, horns blaring around them. If she's there, his voice trailed, choked with rage. Amara's hand shot out, gripping his shoulder. We take them down, together. Arriving at the high-rise, they slipped through the service door, Amara leading, her steps silent and swift, her ears straining for sounds. The elevator hummed upward, her body pressed against the wall, sweat beading on her forehead. Lisa whispered, "Floor 42." The doors dinged open, Amara bursting out, her eyes scanning the hallway. Wentworth followed, his breath ragged, Lisa clutching the laptop like a shield. They approached Langston's door, Amara's ear pressing against it, hearing muffled voices. Eleanor's laugh, Langston's low murmur. Her blood boiled, her fist pounding the door once, hard. The door swung open, Langston's face twisting in shock, his hand reaching for a hidden alarm. "You!" he spat, lunging at Amara, his arm swinging. She dodged, her elbow jamming into his gut, doubling him over with a gasp. Eleanor inside froze, her wine glass shattering on the floor, her elegant dress rumpled. "Charles!" she exclaimed, her voice pitching high, her hands clutching her pearls. Wentworth shoved past, his face a mask of betrayal, grabbing her arms. "How long?" he demanded, his grip iron shaking her. Eleanor's eyes darted, her lips trembling. "Let go!" But Amara cut in, her voice a dagger. "We have the emails, the transfers, all of it." Langston recovered, his hand darting to a drawer, pulling a phone. "Security!" Amara kicked it from his grasp, the device skittering across the floor, her boot stomping it flat with a crunch. "No escape!" she snarled, her body blocking the door, her breaths coming in hot bursts. Lisa thrust the laptop forward, screen showing damning evidence. Signatures, timestamps, amounts. Eleanor's face crumpled, her body sagging against Wentworth. "It was for us, for the future," she whispered, her voice breaking, tears streaking her makeup. Wentworth released her, his hands shaking, stepping back as if burned. "Our future? You stole it!" Amara rifled through Langston's desk, her hands yanking drawers open, papers flying. She found a USB, her fingers plugging it into Lisa's laptop, files loading, more ledgers, voice recordings of deals. "Jackpot," Amara muttered, her eyes scanning, her heart pounding with victory. Langston charged again, his shoulder ramming her side, pain exploding in her ribs. She twisted, her knee driving into his thigh, dropping him to the floor with a thud. "Stay down," she growled, her foot on his back, holding him pinned. Wentworth dialed the police, his voice steady now, reporting the fraud, his free hand rubbing his face, exhaustion and relief warring in his eyes. As sirens wailed in the distance, Amara gathered the evidence, her movements precise, her mind already plotting the next move. Eleanor sobbed, her hands covering her face, her body collapsing into a chair. Langston cursed under her boot, his struggles weakening. Lisa snapped photos, her camera flashing, documenting every detail. Wentworth met Amara's gaze, his nod grateful, a bond forged in the chaos. But Amara's expression hardened, knowing this was just the surface. The real rot lay deeper, waiting to be ripped out. "You killed him! You and your filthy schemes!" Amara's accusation exploded in the penthouse, her finger thrusting at Eleanor like a loaded gun, her body quivering with rage as the USB files scrolled on the laptop screen. Her ribs ached from Langston's hit, but she ignored the fire, her eyes locked on Eleanor's crumbling facade, her breath coming in ragged bursts. Eleanor recoiled against the chair, her hands flying to her mouth, her pearls clattering as tremors shook her frame. "No, it wasn't like that," she whimpered, her voice fracturing, tears carving black streaks down her cheeks. Wentworth stood frozen, his fists clenched, his face a storm of shock and fury, his knuckles splitting skin as he dug nails in deeper. Amara advanced, her boot kicking Langston's prone form aside, his groans muffled as she loomed over Eleanor. "The recordings, your voice, plotting with him to bankrupt my father's firm." The audio played from the laptop, Eleanor's clipped tones detailing the fraud, Langston's laugh punctuating the betrayal. Amara's heart hammered, memories crashing in. Her dad's hollow eyes, his coughs turning bloody after the stress shattered him. "You drove him to his grave," Amara snarled, her voice raw, her hands slamming the desk, rattling the glass shards from earlier. Eleanor shook her head wildly, her hair disheveled, her body curling inward. It was business. He got in the way. Wentworth lunged forward, his hand grabbing Eleanor's wrist, yanking her up, his grip bruising as he forced her to face the screen. My money, our life, built on this. His voice thundered, his free hand gesturing at the files, his chest heaving with betrayal's weight. Eleanor twisted, her nails raking his arm, drawing blood. Let go, she screamed, her eyes wild, but he held tighter, his teeth bared. You poisoned everything. Lisa stepped back, her phone still recording, her fingers trembling on the device, her eyes darting between them. Amara cut in, her voice a scalpel. The dates match. His death, your windfall. She scrolled further, her finger jabbing entries, revealing payoffs to silence witnesses, including a doctor who fudged the autopsy. Eleanor collapsed back, her sobs choking, her hands clutching her dress. Langston pushed it. I just followed. Langston stirred on the floor, his hand reaching weakly, but Amara stomped it down, bone crunching under her heel, his yelp sharp. Liar, she spat, her knee pressing harder, her thighs burning from the strain. Wentworth released Eleanor, his hand wiping blood on his pants, his eyes hollow as truth gutted him. Our marriage, a cover for your greed. He turned to Amara, his nod grim, alliance solidifying in the wreckage. What else? Amara dove deeper into the files, her breath steadying, her mind slicing through data like a blade. Here, your joint plan to frame him for embezzlement. Push him over the edge. The document loaded, signatures glaring, Eleanor's elegant loop, Langston's bold slash. Amara's vision blurred with hot tears, but she blinked them away, her jaw locking tight. He died thinking he failed us. Eleanor's head dropped, her whispers broken. I didn't mean the heart attack. Amara's laugh barked out, venomous. You meant every dime, Lisa gasped, pointing at a subfolder. More transfers to a hit fund, silencing others. Wentworth snatched the laptop, his fingers scrolling frantically, his face ashen as names appeared. Former partners, vanished or dead. This is murder by proxy. His voice shook, his body trembling with rage, his fist pounding the table, cracking the wood. Eleanor lunged for the device, her nails clawing, but Amara intercepted, her arm swinging, elbow connecting with Eleanor's jaw in a crack that echoed. Eleanor staggered back, blood trickling from her lip, her eyes wide with fear. Stop! Please! Amara advanced, her voice lethal. You stop nothing for my family. Sirens grew louder, lights flashing through the windows, but Amara didn't flinch, her hands copying files to her phone, her thumbs flying. Langston groaned, his eyes fluttering open. You'll pay for this. Wentworth kicked him silently, his boot to the ribs, air whooshing out. We already have. The door burst open, police flooding in, badges glinting, hands on holsters. Amara stepped back, her chest heaving, evidence clutched tight. Officers cuffed Langston and Eleanor, their struggles futile, curses flying. Wentworth handed over the USB, his voice steady. Arrest them for fraud, conspiracy, murder. As they were dragged away, Eleanor twisted, her eyes pleading with Wentworth. Charles, I loved you. He turned away, his back rigid, his fists unclenching slowly. Amara met his gaze, her nod fierce, shared pain binding them. But the files whispered more. Deeper ties, untapped horrors. She pocketed her phone, her resolve igniting, the night far from over, shadows lengthening toward the final clash. You're dead if you breathe a word. Victor Crane's threat erupted in the dark alley behind the police station, his knife flashing as he lunged at Amara, the blade slicing air inches from her throat. Her back slammed against the brick wall, breath exploding from her lungs, her hands flying up to block, nails raking his wrist. Blood welled, but Victor twisted, his free hand grabbing her collar, yanking her close, his face inches away, twisted in feral rage. Amara's knee jerked up, connecting with his groin in a crunch that made him double over, his groan guttural. She shoved him back, her boots scraping gravel, her ribs screaming from earlier blows. But adrenaline surged, sharpening every sense. Victor recovered faster than expected, his knife slashing again, nicking her arm, hot blood trickling down her sleeve. Pain lanced through her teeth clamping down to stifle a cry, her body dodging sideways. "You ruined everything," he bellowed, charging anew, his shoulder ramming her into a dumpster, metal clanging like a bell toll. Amara's vision blurred, stars exploding behind her eyes, but she clawed at his face, her fingers gouging skin, drawing red lines across his cheek. He roared, his knife hand swinging wild, forcing her to roll away, gravel biting her palms as she scrambled up. Her heart thundered, fear mixing with fury. Victor had escaped custody somehow, bribed or slipped, now hunting her in the shadows. She bolted toward the alley's mouth, her legs pumping, breaths ragged, but Victor tackled her from behind, his weight crushing her to the ground, air whooshing out. His knife pressed against her neck, cold steel pricking skin, his knee digging into her back. "Eleanor promised me a cut. Millions. You took it all." Amara bucked, her elbows flailing, one connecting with his nose in a wet crack, blood splattering her hair. He yelped, the knife loosening, and she twisted free, her hand grabbing a loose brick, swinging it hard into his temple. The impact vibrated up her arm, Victor staggering back, his eyes glazing. But he didn't fall. He shook it off, his knife hand steadying, advancing slow now, a predator's stalk. "Langston warned me about you. Nosy bitch from the gutter." Amara's back hit the wall again, her arm bleeding freely, slick and warm, her free hand pressing the wound, fingers sticky. She spat blood from a bitten lip, her voice defiant. "Your schemes killed my father. You're done." Victor laughed, a mad cackle, lunging once more, the knife aimed at her chest. She sidestepped, her foot hooking his, tripping him forward, his face smashing into the brick with a thud. He slumped, but rolled, grabbing her ankle, yanking her down. They grappled on the ground, gravel grinding into her skin, her fists pummeling his sides, each hit landing with dull thuds. Victor's knife clattered away, but his hands found her throat, squeezing, stars bursting in her vision, air cut off. Her lungs burned, her nails clawing his forearms, tearing flesh, but his grip tightened, his face inches above, eyes bulging with hate. "Die," he hissed, spittle flying. Amara's mind flashed to Malik, his smile, his hugs, fueling a final surge. Her knee drove up again, harder, into his ribs, cracking bone. He gasped, his hold loosening, and she headbutted him, forehead to nose, blood erupting. Victor reeled, his hands releasing, clutching his face. Amara gasped air, her throat raw, coughing violently as she crawled for the knife, her fingers closing around the handle, blade trembling in her grip. She stood, legs shaky, pointing it at him. "Stay down!" But Victor rose, swaying, his eyes murderous, charging blindly. She slashed the air, warning, but he grabbed her wrist, twisting, pain shooting up her arm. They struggled, the knife between them, her back arching against his force. Wentworth's voice echoed from the alley entrance. "Amara!" He sprinted in, tackling Victor from the side, the three tumbling in a heap. Wentworth pinned Victor, his fists raining down, each punch connecting with meaty thwacks, Victor's head snapping back. Amara rolled away, clutching her throat, breaths wheezing, her body bruised and bloodied. Lisa appeared, phone flashlight beaming, her voice urgent. "Cops are coming!" Victor bucked, his elbow catching Wentworth's jaw, stunning him momentarily. Amara lunged, her boot kicking Victor's head, dazing him long enough for Wentworth to cuff his hands with a zip tie from his pocket. Victor slumped, defeated, muttering curses. Amara leaned against the wall, her body trembling, blood dripping from her arm, but her eyes fierce. Wentworth stood, helping her up, his arm around her shoulders. "You're safe." She nodded, pain throbbing, but resolve unbroken. The sirens grew louder, lights flashing, but Victor's whispers lingered. "There's more. Hidden." Amara's grip tightened on the knife, secret still buried, danger not yet buried. "Search him, now!" Amara's order barked in the alley, her knife still gripped tight as she knelt over Victor's bound form, her knee pressing into his chest, blood from her arm dripping onto his shirt. Her breath came in gasps, pain radiating from her throat and ribs. but her eyes burned with urgency, scanning his pockets. Victor writhed, his body bucking, his teeth bared in a snarl. "You'll find nothing." Wentworth dove in, his hands rifling Victor's jacket, yanking out a wallet, keys, a phone, cracked screen flickering. Lisa shone her flashlight, her beam jittery, illuminating the hall on the gravel. Amara snatched the phone, her thumb smashing the screen to life, ignoring the sting in her slashed arm, blood smearing the glass. The device buzzed, a passcode, prompt glaring. Amara's fist slammed Victor's shoulder. "Code!" He laughed, blood bubbling from his split lip. "Go to hell!" Wentworth's boot pressed his throat, cutting off air, Victor's face purpling. "Give it!" Victor choked out digits, 4729, his eyes bulging. Amara punched them in, the phone unlocking, apps blooming. She scrolled frantically, her fingers flying through messages, emails, files, her heart pounding as fragments emerge. "Here, text to Eleanor. Coordinates for a storage unit." Lisa leaned in, her breath hot on Amara's shoulder. "That's in Queens? Hidden docks?" They hauled Victor up, his body limp, curses muffled as police lights flashed closer. Amara pocketed the phone, her grip iron. "We go. Now!" Wentworth nodded, his jaw set, dragging Victor toward the arriving cops. "Hand him over. Meet at the unit." Officers swarmed, cuffs clicking on Victor anew, his struggles renewed as he spat at Amara. "You're finished!" An officer shoved him into the cruiser, doors slamming. Amara winced, clutching her arm, blood soaking her sleeve. But she bolted to Wentworth's SUV, Lisa piling in behind. The engine roared, tires screeching as they peeled away, sirens fading behind. In the vehicle, Amara bandaged her arm with a ripped shirt sleeve, her teeth gritted against the burn, her free hand navigating the phone's maps. "Unit 17, self-storage on 45th. Wentworth weaved through streets, his knuckles white on the wheel, his eyes flicking to her. "You're bleeding bad." She waved him off, her voice sharp. "Drive." Lisa hacked the phone further, her laptop open, pulling deleted files, recovered photos of documents, ledgers showing siphoned billions, Eleanor's signatures everywhere. "This proves the murders, poison deals leading to accidents." Amara's stomach nodded, her father's face flashing, his collapse after the fraud. "We end this." Arriving at the storage facility, gates chained, Amara hopped out, her bolt cutters from the trunk snapping the lock with a metallic ping. Pain shot through her arm, but she pushed on, leading them down dim corridors, fluorescent lights buzzing. Unit 17 loomed, padlock gleaming. Wentworth kicked it, metal denting, but Amara stopped him, her key from Victor's ring fitting perfectly, turning with a click. The door rolled up, revealing boxes, files stacked high, a safe in the corner. Amara dove in, her hands tearing lids off, papers spilling, contracts, bank statements, audio tapes labeled with dates. Lisa grabbed a tape, plugging it into a portable player from the box. Voices crackled. Eleanor and Langston, plotting Wentworth's downfall, laughs cold as ice. "He'll never see it," Eleanor's voice sneered. Amara's fists clenched, tapes crunching in her grip, rage boiling. Wentworth rifled the safe, cracking it with Victor's code, pulling out hard drives, his face ashen as he plugged one into Lisa's laptop. Files loaded, videos of meetings, bribes, even a clip of Victor disposing evidence, his hands gloved. "This is the smoking gun," Wentworth muttered, his voice thick, betrayal carving deeper lines on his face. Amara found a ledger, her fingers tracing entries. Her father's name crossed out, handled, scrawled beside. Tears stung, but she blinked them away, her jaw locking. They covered killings. A noise echoed, footsteps outside. Amara froze, her body tensing, knife from earlier in hand. "Someone's here!" Wentworth killed the light, his hand on her shoulder squeezing. Lisa whispered, "Back up?" The door rattled, a shadow looming. Amara crept forward, her breath shallow, knife raised. The intruder burst in, a guard, flashlight swinging. "Freeze!" Amara tackled him, her body colliding, knife at his throat. "Who sent you?" The guard gasped, his hands up. "Langston, bail call, destroy everything." Wentworth zip-tied him, his kicks swift, subduing the man. Amara searched him, finding a burner phone, text confirming. We have it all now. They gathered the evidence, boxes hauled to the SUV, Amara's arms straining, blood seeping through her bandage. As they drove off, police en route again, Amara's phone buzzed. Anonymous threat. Stop or your kid dies. Her blood ran cold, her grip crushing the device, but her voice steel. They're desperate. We hit the board meeting. Expose them live. Wentworth nodded, accelerator floored, the vehicle hurtling toward confrontation, evidence a ticking bomb in the trunk. You're all liars, every last one. Amara's voice thundered in the boardroom, her bloody arm thrusting the USB forward like a spear, her body storming the podium, shoving the chairman aside with a shoulder check that sent him staggering. Her ribs screamed in protest, blood seeping through her makeshift bandage, but her eyes blazed, locking on the sea of suited faces. Shareholders, executives, Eleanor and Langston at the head table, their expressions cracking from smug to shocked. Wentworth burst in behind her, boxes of evidence slamming onto the table, papers scattering like shrapnel. Listen to her, he roared, his fist pounding the wood, cracking the surface, his face flushed with fury. Eleanor leapt up, her chair toppling, her hands clawing the air. Security! Get them out! But Amara plugged the USB into the projector, her fingers jamming at home, files exploding onto the screen, ledgers, emails, videos flickering to life. See this? Amara snarled, her pointer jabbing the display, her voice cutting through the murmurs. Your billions, stolen by her and him. The room erupted, gasps and shouts blending, chairs scraping as bodies shifted. Langston surged forward, his arms swinging to yank the cord. But Lisa blocked him, her elbow driving into his gut, doubling him over with a wheeze. Sit down, she snapped, her stance fierce, holding him at bay. The video played, Eleanor's voice plotting, bankrupt him, take it all. Shareholders recoiled, one man's face draining white, his hand clutching his tie. Amara advanced on Eleanor, her knife from the alley still in her pocket, hand itching to draw it, but she restrained, her voice a whip. You murdered my father. Stress, schemes. His heart gave out because of you. Eleanor's lips trembled, her body backing against the table, her pearls snapping as she clutched them too tightly. Lies, she screeched, lunging for the remote. But Wentworth intercepted, his hand crushing hers, bones grinding. Truth hurts, he growled, twisting until she yelped, releasing it. Amara scrolled to the next file. Audio of Victor's confessions. Payments for silence, accidents listed like grocery items. A shareholder bolted up, his finger jabbing at Langston. Arrest him! Langston roared back, his fist balling. She's a fraud! A waitress! He charged Amara, his shoulder ramming her injured arm, pain exploding white-hot. But she twisted, her knee driving into his thigh, dropping him to his knees with a crack. Not anymore, she hissed, her boot on his neck, pressing down, his gasps ragged. The room froze, eyes wide, the projector beaming damning proof. Signatures, timestamps, millions vanished. Wentworth took the podium, his voice booming. I tear this deal apart. He grabbed the contract stack, ripping pages in half, shreds flying like confetti. Shareholders murmured approval, one woman nodding fiercely, her pen scribbling notes. Eleanor collapsed into her seat, sobs racking her frame, her makeup smeared. Charles, please. He cut her off, his hand slashing the air. You're done. Amara released Langston, her boot kicking him aside, his body sprawling. Police sirens wailed outside, doors bursting open, officers flooding in, cuffs ready. Cuff them, Amara commanded, her arm pointing, blood dripping to the floor. Langston struggled as cops pinned him, his elbows flailing, connecting with an officer's jaw in a thud. You'll regret this, Amara's laugh barked out, cold and sharp. We already won. Eleanor resisted, her nails raking an officer's arm, drawing blood. But they subdued her, her screams echoing. Shareholders applauded sporadically, one man standing, Justice! Wentworth met Amara's eyes, his nod grateful, handing her the podium. She stood tall, her voice steady despite the pain. This empire survives because truth cuts deeper than greed. The room hushed, absorbing the flip, power shifting in an instant. As cops dragged the pair away, Langston twisted, spitting at Amara. Your kid's next. Her blood ran ice, but she charged, her fist connecting with his jaw in a final crack, silencing him. Officers pulled her back, but Wentworth intervened. She's the hero. The boardroom cleared, whispers of reform buzzing, but Amara clutched the evidence tighter. Shadows of victory mixed with lingering threats, the air thick with promise of rebuilding from the ashes. You're guilty! Rot in hell! Amara's shout echoed in the courtroom, her fists slamming the witness stand, wood splintering under the force, her eyes drilling into Eleanor's cuffed form across the aisle. Eleanor's body jerked, chains rattling, her face pale as death, lips quivering in denial. The judge's gavel cracked down, but Amara didn't flinch, her arm still bandaged, scars itching under the fabric, her stance unyielding. Langston beside Eleanor snarled back, his shackles clinking as he lunged against the bailiff's hold. You framed us. But the jury's foreman stood, voice booming. Guilty on all counts. Fraud, conspiracy, manslaughter. The room detonated. Gasps, shouts, cameras flashing like gunfire. Eleanor collapsed, sobs wrenching her frame, her hands clawing the defense table, nails splintering wood. No! She wailed, body convulsing, guards hauling her up, her legs buckling. Langston fought, elbows flying, connecting with a guard's jaw on a thud, blood spraying. I'll appeal, he roared, but another guard tasered him, his body jerking in spasms, collapsing in a heap. Amara's chest heaved, triumph mixing with raw grief, her fists unclenching slowly, knuckles raw from clenching. Wentworth stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder, squeezing hard, his own eyes wet, betrayal's scars etched deep. It's over, he muttered, his voice cracking, body leaning as if the weight lifted. The judge sentenced, life for manslaughter, decades for fraud, his gavel final, echoing like a death knell. Victor in the dock behind whimpered, his plea deal shattered, guards dragging him out, his feet scraping the floor. Amara watched, her throat tight, memories of her father's grave fueling the fire, his unmarked stone now avenged. Outside, reporters swarmed, microphones thrusting like spears. Ms. Johnson, justice served? Amara shoved through, her elbow clearing path, her voice sharp. For my family, yes. Wentworth shielded her, his arm barring cameras, his glare silencing questions. They reached the car, doors slamming, engine roaring away. Amara's body sagged, exhaustion crashing, but her eyes gleamed. The company? Wentworth nodded, his grip on the wheel tightening. Clean sweep, board purged. Shareholders had voted, ousting enablers, reforms slashing, transparency mandates, audits ironclad. Back at headquarters, Wentworth fired the last traitor, his voice thundering in the hall. Out, now! The man scrambled, files dropping, feet slipping on marble. Amara watched, her arms crossed, scars throbbing but healing. Malik waited in the lobby, his small hands waving, running into her embrace. Mommy won! She hugged him tight, her chin on his head, tears held back. Justice tasted bittersweet, knots unraveling, but scars lingered. Wentworth knelt, ruffling Malik's hair. Your mom's a hero. The boy beamed, his hug fierce. As night fell, Amara reviewed the final reports. Assets recovered, victims compensated, her father's name cleared in headlines. She slammed the folder shut, her fist on the desk, resolve hardening. But Eleanor's final courtroom glare haunted, vengeance promised in her eyes. Amara's phone buzzed, anonymous text. Not over. Her breath caught, fingers crushing the device, shadows creeping back. This fund saves lives, starting now. Wentworth's declaration boomed in the press conference hall, his fist pounding the podium, wood vibrating under the impact, his eyes sweeping the crowd of reporters, victims' families, and board members. His suit jacket strained against his shoulders, sweat beading on his brow, but his voice held steel, regret fueling every word. Amara stood beside him, her arm in a sling, scars hidden under sleeves, her chin high, body still aching from the fights, but her presence commanded silence. For every wrong we ignored, Wentworth continued, his hand gesturing to the banner behind, Carter Foundation, named for her father, his fingers trembling slightly. Millions for single moms, education, justice. Reporters surged, microphones thrusting. Mr. Wentworth, atonement or PR? He cut them off, his voice slashing. Atonement, full stop. Amara stepped forward, her boot thumping the stage, her voice clear and fierce. This isn't charity, it's repair. She grabbed the mic, her grip white-knuckled, eyes locking on a single mom in the front row, tears streaking her face. Scholarships for finance degrees, legal aid for fraud victims, real change. Wentworth nodded, his hand signing the first check on stage, ink flowing bold, handing it to the woman, her hands shaking as she accepted. For your kids, he said, his voice thick, body leaning as if unloading a burden. The crowd murmured approval, flashes popping, but a skeptic shouted, How much? Wentworth's jaw tightened, his fist clenching. Half my fortune. Billions. Gasps rippled, Amara's eyes widening for a split second, her breath catching. More than expected, his sacrifice raw. She squeezed his arm, her fingers digging in support, pain shooting up her own wounds. Company policies overhaul, he added, his voice rising. No more blind deals. Transparency first. Board members shifted, one standing to applaud, his claps sharp, others joining reluctantly, palms smacking. Amara took over, her voice commanding. We build from the ground, mentorships, jobs for the overlooked. She pointed to Lisa in the audience, now promoted, her nod fierce. No more gutter dismissals. Wentworth unveiled plaques, honoring Amara's father, victims etched in gold, his hammer nailing one to the wall, strikes echoing like verdicts. Families rushed the stage, hugs crushing, tears soaking shirts. Amara embraced a widow, her arms tight, whispering, We fight on. The woman pulled back, eyes grateful, hands clasping Amara's. Critics pressed, one shoving forward. Too late for damage? Wentworth spun, his finger jabbing. Never too late. He announced investigations, internal probes, firing enablers, his voice thundering. Clean house. Executives paled, one bolting, security blocking his path, cuffs waiting. Amara's smile flashed, brief and sharp, her body straightening despite fatigue. Malik ran on stage, his small fist pumping. Mommy's fund! She scooped him up, his weight pulling her sling, pain flaring, but her hold firm. Our future, she said, voice soft to him, loud to the room. Donations poured in, screens tallying millions, Wentworth matching every dime, his checks flying. A victim spoke, voice breaking. You saved my home. Amara's throat tightened, her hand wiping a tear, resolve hardening. Wentworth knelt to a child, handing a scholarship letter, his eyes wet. Learn. Fight. The kid nodded, hugging him fiercely. As the event wound down, Amara pulled Wentworth aside, her grip on his sleeve. This heals. He nodded, shoulders sagging in relief, body lighter. But threats lingered. Anonymous calls traced, guards posted. Amara trained self-defense with Malik, her kicks swift, his giggles mixing with grunts. Wentworth rebuilt his home, walls fortified, trust selective. The foundation launched programs, workshops busting scams, her leading, voice empowering crowds. Victims testified, chains breaking, lives mending. Amara visited her father's grave, plaque in hand, hammering it in, tears falling. We did it. Wentworth joined, his hand on her back, silent support. The sun set, casting long shadows, but hope pierced through. Foundations laid for legacies unbreakable. We rise, together. Amara's rallying cry exploded in the community center, her fists thrusting skyward, body surging with energy as she gripped the mic, her scars hidden under a blazer, but her voice unbreakable. The crowd erupted, cheers thundering, single moms and fraud victims leaping to their feet, fists pumping. Malik, beside her, beamed, his small hand in hers, squeezing tight, his eyes wide with pride. Wentworth stood back, his applause sharp, body leaning against the wall, his suit rumpled from a day of groundwork, regret transformed into action. The foundation's first graduates crossed the stage, diplomas in hand, hugs crushing as Amara handed them out, her embraces fierce, tears held back by sheer will. One graduate, a woman with calloused hands, clutched Amara's arm. "You gave me this." Amara's throat tightened, her nod firm. "You earned it." The woman's story mirrored hers, schemes stripping homes, but now rebuilt. Wentworth stepped up, his checkbook out, signing bonuses on the spot, ink flowing swiftly. "Jobs waiting, at my firm." The graduate's eyes widened, her hug enveloping him, his back stiffening then relaxing, acceptance washing over. Reporters captured it, flashes popping, headlines already spinning. Billionaire redeems empire. Later in the quiet office, Amara reviewed applications, her pencil flying, selecting more. Dozens empowered. Lisa burst in, files in hand. "New branch, Bronx location approved." Amara's smile flashed, her fist bumping Lisa's. "Hit them hard." They mapped expansions, pins stabbing maps, territories claimed from greed's grasp. Wentworth entered, coffee in hand, his offering simple. "For the team." Amara accepted, her sip hot, grounding. "Your divorce final?" He nodded, his ring finger bare, scars invisible but felt. "Clean break. Foundation's my focus." Malik tugged her sleeve. "Mommy, drawing." He thrust crayon art, heroes fighting shadows, mom in front. Amara knelt, her arms wrapping him, heart swelling. "Perfect." Wentworth watched, his eyes soft, kneeling too. "You're the real hero, kid." Malik hugged him, small arms tight, bridging worlds. Dinner followed, table laden, Amara cooking, spices sharp, laughter filling the air. Stories flowed, her father's lessons, Wentworth's falls, Lisa's triumphs. "Truth wins," Amara said, her voice steady, fork gesturing. Heads nodded, bonds forging like steel. Threats faded, anonymous senders traced, arrested, cells slamming shut. Amara trained harder, her punches snapping air, Malik mimicking, giggles mixing with grunts. "Strong like you," he said. She ruffled his hair, her kiss firm. Wentworth funded security, guards discreet, peace guarded. Board meetings shifted. Amara at the head, her voice commanding. No blind spots. Executives complied, pens scribbling reforms, greed curbed, profits soared, ethical now, dividends feeding the fun. Years blurred. Malik grew, his finance degree from the program, Amara pinning his cap, tears escaping. Dad would be proud. Wentworth aged gracefully, foundation for his legacy, handing the reins to Amara. "Your turn." She accepted, her handshake firm, vision expanding. Global outreach, scams shattered worldwide. Victims became mentors, cycles broken, lives rebuilt. One evening, Amara visited the grave, flowers in hand, whispering, "We did it." Wind stirred, peace settling. The lesson etched deep. Truth cuts through darkness. Resilience forges paths. Amara stood tall, family new and strong, future bright, battles won echoing in every step forward. In the end, this story reminds us that truth and integrity always prevail, no matter how underestimated or overlooked you may be. True worth lies in knowledge, courage, and standing firm against injustice. If you've ever faced judgment or fought for what's right, share your thoughts or your own story in the comments below. We'd love to hear how you've risen above. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next tale of triumph and resilience.